Will the Senate agree? That is the question. Joining us now is Jessica Brady. She is staff reporter for CQ Roll Call. Thanks for joining us, Jessica.
Thanks, Heather.
So we're talking about the March 4th deadline. A plan, as we said, it has begun to emerge anyway to avoid the government shutdown. Some of the Democrats are eyeing it. They've said their words with cautious optimism. Are you cautiously optimistic?
I better be. It's going to be a long week on Capitol Hill. Speaker Boehner has indicated that 2-week extension that Republicans introduced last week will be on the floor on Tuesday. So that gives the Senate just a couple of days to act. Typically in Congress, as the deadlines get closer, action happens. And so, hopefully by Friday, something will pass.
And let's talk about that plan, specifically the Republican plan. It would fund the government for 2 more weeks. It demands immediate budget cuts totaling about $4 billion. That's a far cry from the $61 billion that they want. Why do you think these cuts, the $4 billion, will pass, and why is that 2 weeks imperative?
Well, the 2 weeks gives both sides of the Capitol some time to try to work something out longer term. You're right that the $4 billion is a lot less than 61. But Speaker Boehner can go back to his Republican colleagues, and say, look, this is a start, and when we negotiate this longer-term piece, we will get more cuts. The $4 billion is important because of those cuts, some are from what President Barack Obama suggested in his own budget, as well as earmarks, which both chambers have sort of sworn off this year. So, many onlookers are saying that this is a good start. This is certainly not something that is going to pass muster among House Republicans, especially those new freshmen that came here with the total intent of cost cutting. But, a 2-week extension is essentially buying them all some time.
And speaking of those cuts, you mentioned this, some of those cuts not too surprising to President Obama, $1.24 billion from programs already targeted for cuts or elimination. That includes about $650 million from additional general fund spending for highways, $250 million from the Striving Readers program, also another 4 education programs in total we're talking about. Any of those cuts specifically stand out to you?
Again, these are things that President Barack Obama himself had outlined as, either duplicative or just sort of unnecessary. Or, another one that was mentioned is the Smithsonian Institution. There was some money for some updates. And, they're saying now that through private funding, that's going to be fine. These are all, like you mentioned earlier, a lot smaller than the $61 billion that went through the House last week. At this point, these are seen as a little more harmless in terms of what the Senate Democrats are willing to take.
Hey, but we finally are talking about some earmarks here, talking about cutting some earmarks, $2.7 billion worth specifically. The Army Corps of Engineers, $341 million, energy efficiency, renewable energy, offices of science and health affairs, HUD initiatives also being hit. What about any potential sticking points you see as we try to go forward with it?
Well, we'll see. Senator Mitch McConnell on the Senate side, the Republican leader, and, the Republican leadership on the House side worked this out together in tandem for about 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit less than that, actually. But, they presumably have worked this out with their members, and we'll just see where it goes from there.
Finally, what do you think? Who will take the blame if we do actually have a government shutdown?
True question. I'm not sure that there is going to be one. If there is one, I suppose that the blame will be shared. You've seen a lot of back and forth between the two parties and the two chambers leading up to this week. Senator Harry Reid has been trying to put the blame squarely into the Republicans' lap. Republicans have now said, look, we've put out 2 different spending measures. You have to accept one of them. We're trying to work with you. So each side is definitely playing a game of chicken here.
All right, we'll see what happens. Zeroing in on March 4th. Thank you very much, Jessica. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.